We have major breaking news this morning. President Trump, in the aftermath of the failed talks in Islamabad last night, has declared a naval blockade of Iran. This is literally minutes ago. President Trump on Truth Social writes, there you have it. The meeting went well. Most points were agreed to, but the only point that really mattered, nuclear, was not. Effective immediately, the United States Navy, the finest in the world, will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. That is really important. I'll get to that in just a second. At some point, we will reach an all being allowed to go in, all being allowed to go out basis, but Iran has not allowed that to happen by merely saying there may be a mine out there somewhere that nobody knows about. This is world extortion, and leaders in countries, especially the United States of America, will never be extorted. I've also instructed our Navy, this is even more important. I've also instructed our Navy to seek and interdict every vessel in international waters that has already paid a toll to Iran. No one who pays an illegal toll will have safe passage on the high seas. This is piracy. We will also begin destroying the mines the Iranians laid in the straits. Any Iranian who fires at us or peaceful vessels will be blown to hell. Iran knows better than anyone how to end this situation, which has already devastated their country. The Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft and radar, all useless. Khomeini, most of their leaders are dead because their nuclear ambitions. This blockade will begin shortly. Other countries will be involved in the blockade. One imagines he's going to put more pressure on NATO to join in. Iran will not be allowed to profit off this illegal act of extortion. They want money, and more importantly, they want nuclear. Additionally, and at an appropriate moment, we are fully locked and loaded, and our military will finish up the little that is left of Iran. So pretty much in broad terms there, President Trump has just flat out said the war is about to begin, and we are now ramping things up a couple of notches, not even one notch, really. Because when you take a look at the statement that we're going to blockade everything going in and coming out, that by itself is a major escalation. And then that they're also going to hunt down any vessels that have already paid the toll and been passed through that Iran allowed. You can see where now then you're talking about potentially other countries being involved, like China. Many of the ships that have gone through with the toll being paid in Chinese yuan, and many of them were specifically headed to China. Is President Trump willing and ready to actually potentially bring China into this? That's what's on the table here. And listen, there is no, international law is long since been destroyed, so there's really no point in talking about that. But there's certainly no international law that allows you to unilaterally, any country, to just say, I don't like the policies being employed here, and I don't like what they're doing, so I'm going to go to the open seas, and anybody who ships to doing something I don't like, I'm going to interdict them. That's piracy, and that's what we're talking about here. But listen, you got to understand look, the price of oil has been held in check. It's been right around $100 a barrel. Every time it gets a little above that, Trump does something or says something that calms the market down and brings it a little bit lower. And then they kept it. It's been pretty successful at around $100 a barrel. Now, remember some of the key ways that he did that. He, first of all, relieved sanctions on Russia so that they could export more. And then one of the bigger surprises early in the war, he relieved a lot of the sanctions on Iran itself to allow them to ship out more oil, and that had its effect that it lowered the price of oil. But here's the problem: is that also gave money to Iran and some confidence, and that gave them the ability to actually control the strait. Apparently, that's something that President Trump has come to agree with. Now, there was an interesting statement by Richard Haass, the chief of the Council on Foreign Relations. This was put out by Dropsite News. Watch this. Richard Haass, head of the Council on Foreign Relations, said Washington is negotiating from strength, is not negotiating from strength, and that this is prior to yesterday's talks, and that Iran has emerged from the war with greater leverage. On Hormuz, he suggests Washington should tell Iran that the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all or closed to all. So you see that nearly identical phrase Trump just used. Proposes an international governing commission, including Iran and Gulf states, to oversee transit through the Hormuz. Open to tolls and revenue sharing is part of the framework. Crucially, Haass says that if Iran refuses, the U.S. should consider blockading Hormuz. Literally straight from his comments here, you see. So Trump apparently absolutely listened to that. His view: Washington should not accept Iran's sole control over Hormuz, but also realistically cannot exclude Iran from the strait. Haas says that the war has made a return to the pre-war status quo is impossible, and the U.S. has lost the war in a strategic and political sense. One wonders if President Trump is listening to that one as well. So we can imagine when the markets open up tomorrow, they're going to be in a panic because now that you're taking all the oil off. He says nothing in or out. And listen, one of the things I've been saying over and over, that the pressure on the United States to get this over with is because the price of oil, but also on the urea, helium, aluminum, all kinds of other things that are supposed to be coming out too, which has direct impact on what happens in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe. It drives the price up everywhere. And that's why I said he's under the gun, that ticking clock, so to speak, that he has to get something negotiated to get this thing over with and get the flow back opening in by whatever it means. And I had mentioned before that my concern was that he would not do what is diplomatically necessary that would allow in any way, shape, or form Iran to come out with a victory or even the perception of a victory. But then he also couldn't go the other direction. He couldn't say, well, then forget it. We'll just amp it up a little bit and we'll go back in with more bombs, more missiles. I don't know, a naval blockade. And that somehow that's going to force Iran, then nothing else did. But it's not going to. Iran has certainly foreseen this. I can't imagine that they would be shocked by this. I'm sure they don't like it. They definitely won't like it because now then the revenue that they were getting is now going to be severed. But that's something that they probably foresaw, and I have no doubt have the ability to say, this is really a game of chicken right now. Because the question is going to be who can take this stress and this pressure in the war. There will no doubt be a lot more stress and pressure on the Iranians. No question about it. Because the question is, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if your effort to bring more military power does not force capitulation? Now then you have added to the pressure that's going to make that oil price go up. Now you have stopped anything, even the trickle that was going 6 to 10, I think, ships per day coming through instead of the normal 100, 130. So that is going to cause even more problems. And if Iran just says, okay, bring it on, then what's he going to do? What if he comes in with a lot more firepower? He says, we're going to bring even more missiles and more bombs, and we're going to blow up even more ships. What is that going to? What if that doesn't open it up? Because it's a political decision now more than a military one for the Iranian side to keep that strait closed. As I've told you, they've got a half a dozen different ways they can keep it closed, not just mines. That's only one of them, not even the most effective in my view. There's plenty of things that they can do. And if they have said that they're willing to suffer and to pay whatever price, there's a pretty good chance that they can outlast Trump. They can probably go months. And I mean, their mentality is used to suffering. They physically have been suffered a lot because of what the West has done, the United States in particular, United States and Israel. They've done this for a long time. It's very unwise to say, let's see who can suffer the longest. That's what we're done here. This game of chicken I'm talking about, this is a test of wills between President Trump and the leadership in Iran. And it's between the peoples of Iran and the peoples of the West, not even just the United States. Who can suffer the most, the longest? Based on track records, I would argue that that's what the Iranian side can do. And listen, this can't be a surprise to anybody. I mean, let's take a look actually how we got here. Because this was President Trump yesterday, prior to the start of these negotiations, when he kind of laid out where his mind was.
Look, regardless, we win. Regardless what happens, we win. We've totally defeated that country. And so let's see what happens. Maybe they make a deal, maybe they don't. From the standpoint of America, we win. One of the things that's happening is that boats are sailing up and heading out to our country, big, beautiful tankers, and we're loading them up with oil and gas and everything else, and it's a pretty beautiful thing to see.
So, yeah, he said, I wasn't even worried about that. We're going to win no matter what. So that already told you that his idea was basically we're going in telling them, here's the deal, accept this deal, or we're going to kill you. I mean, that's been the modus operandi for a long time, but certainly in this term with President Trump. And he's been used to getting his way, and it's largely succeeded. But now it's run up into an immovable object, and he doesn't seem to have the wherewithal, the brain cells, the cognitive ability, I don't know, you name it, to have anyone say no to him. And so you see this near tantrum today. Oh, yeah? You don't want to do what I say? How about this? How about a blockade? How about we'll blow up any ships on the open water? All this designed to put pressure on the Iranians. But you're seeing that the Iranian side, listen, they're not. This is the deputy speaker of the Iranian parliament, the deputy to Ghalibaf, who we'll see in just a second. And so interesting on the bottom, you see on the bottom bullet there, he said, second to bottom, he said, despite sanctions, Iran's oil exports have surpassed 1.6 million barrels today, and the country's oil is practically sanctions proof. Well, that may have been one of the things that may push President Trump over the top. You saw Richard Haas's comments that gave him the idea, but maybe when he saw this, he says, oh, you think you're sanctions proof? How about this? I'll just shut all of it off. Now you get 0.0 barrels per day. But then the last point there, he said the Iranian nation will not retreat even an inch from its demands. They're not fools. They're not stupid. And they know that if you are boastful in front of President Trump, that he's going to capitulate. So they certainly didn't expect that. And one imagines that they actually expected him to do something like he's doing, but certainly not to surrender to it. You have Ghalibaf himself, who says that this delegates raised a forward-looking initiative during a ceasefire negotiations in Pakistan, but the United States failed to gain the trust of the delegation in the talks. So he's saying, listen, this is you have to come to our terms here. You have to rise up and do something. You have to earn our trust. And when we get it, then we'll consider something else. They knew what a petulant President Trump would do. So there's no doubt that they expected something like this. They have to have. And so then we're getting into it's the test of wills. And then Vice President Vance, when he went to these talks, when he came out of it, there's long talks, 21 hours or so of it. But in his comments afterward, I think that he again revealed that this was never about a negotiation. This was about a requirement on the Iranian side for surrender.
We just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms. I think that we were quite flexible. We were quite accommodating. The president told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the president throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the president consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team because we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it.
Okay, that's not diplomacy. We left here with our final and best offer. I mean, it took years to negotiate an end to the Vietnam War. It took a year and a half to negotiate an end to the Korean War. And you come in here in one day, one 21-hour day, and you say we want to negotiate in good faith. That's not negotiating. That is saying, here's my terms, accept it, or we're going to kill you. And now they said, no, we're not going to accept that. And so now President Trump has said, we're going to kill you. We're going to come in with our military. We're going to start, hammering up again. As soon as he gets all the ammunition resupplied, like has been in the process ever since this ceasefire began. And now he's added that we're going to attack ships on the open sea, and we're going to attack anybody who tries to stop us. We're going to start demanding. That is a huge mistake. I hope he doesn't do it. I hope that's just bluster. Hopefully the leaders in the Navy will say, no, Mr. President, you send our ships in there to start demanding without the concurrence or the acquiescence of the Iranian side. You're going to get our ships sunk. You're going to get them attacked. You're not going to clear the mine. You may result in the Iranian side putting more mines in there. Because if you shut it off and say nobody's coming in, they may say, fair enough, nobody's coming in or out now. And then now it's going to be a panic in the Gulf. because already I showed you that chart yesterday, I think, that there's huge amounts of oil that's been already stopped by the Gulf nations. So that means that their income has been radically cut and they're struggling mightily. They also need imports coming in because they need all kinds of things for food, other kind of goods and requirements for just their survival as a nation. They depend upon that traffic coming in as much as we depend on the traffic coming out. Now, President Trump has stopped all of it. Now, where is this going to go? In the near term, I mean, you have the Iranian side is saying, yeah, they're ready to go. Apparently, they were prepared before this, and now it says, yep, now that the talks have apparently collapsed, they're ready to go. But they're not the only ones. Now there's continued additional information here that U.S. intelligence shows that China is taking a more active role in the Iran war. Apparently, including shoulder-fired missiles, China is secretly taking an active stance in the war, allowing some companies to use chemicals, fuel, and components that can be used in dual purpose for war. What do you think they're going to do if you start attacking China, if you start attacking their ships on the open waters that are bringing goods or oil to them? Probably not going to go very well. So this could be escalated in nearly any way you want to look at it. This is the worst thing that the U.S. could have done. It can't be surprising to anybody, but this is not going to end well. Let me just categorically state this will not cause the Iranian side to capitulate. They're just not going to do it. It's not in their DNA, and they almost certainly foresaw this. It may have even been their plan to goad President Trump into doing something that would escalate this, because I think they know that militarily we can't suffer more than they can. That's the problem. Well, we're going to find out. Well, listen, we appreciate you guys on a Sunday morning here, but I didn't want to let you go without at least giving you an update on this breaking news here. We're going to continue to follow it, the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Anything further, you can count on us to bring it to you. Until then, we'll see you at the next time.